Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to Women That Shred. I have a very special guest. I'm not going to lie when I said I'm kind of like a little bit nervous because, like, this is your thing. So I feel like I have to bring my A game. Not that I don't bring it every week, but like, especially today, like my A++ game. Welcome, Messerli, to Women That Shred.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be on here. I don't know if this is my thing. This is totally your thing, but I am so happy to chat.
Yeah, no, it's funny because oddly enough, like I feel like I'm very witchy in the sense that like when people pop into my head and I'm like, I need to have them on the show, you were one of those people, and it just happened to be that you just released the 220 or 2022 next gen housing report, and then you were on Josh's show on Monday, and I literally had no idea that was going on. So it's just really funny that, like, for whatever reason, I just felt like compelled to have you on.
Yeah,
So
no, and I'm so grateful for that because I actually was working so hard on getting the report done, and I was like tight on the deadline. I didn't think at all about promotion. And so last minute I was like, Josh, can I get on your show? Like, it was like, check out this report. And then I was talking to a couple people, but I didn't like do much promotion at all. So when you reached out, I was like, oh, thank you. This is amazing.
I know. I literally had no clue.
We're just connected.
I just knew that I wanted you on. That's why I was like, yeah, sometimes I'm like really in tune with the universe. And this was one of those
Yeah. I love it.
What's really cool too is that you and I, the last time we actually spoke was during COVID. I was on your podcast. So it's kind of cool that I get to, have a little role reversal here.
I know. Yeah. That was a while ago. So it's good to see you.
Absolutely. So Kristin, I always like to just dive in because we only have 30 minutes. And I feel like this is a topic that we could really, just talk all day long about it. And especially being that it is Women That Shred, and it is geared a little bit more towards women, but I do have a lot of male guests on here. I just feel like this particular episode is going to be very valuable for everybody in the industry. So that's why I was like, everybody needs to watch. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, let's just like go right ahead. I mean, why a report? Like I love that you are like the one person that I see in the industry that's younger, that's really doing a great job, like being a champion of the next generation and like what we need to do in order to like be better. Hi, Kristin.
Yeah, no. So I just I started the NextGen Homebuyer Report 3 years ago in 2020, and was working with National MI on creating new content, and was thinking, I want to share the voice of the next gen consumer and homeowner, and what's the best way to do that is to survey them. So it started in 2020 and put together a report then. We did it again last year. And what's cool about this year is that we have a couple of years to build on and have found some really interesting insights that we've pulled along the way, mostly being focused on like trust and confidence and education. And so we really concentrated on those areas going into this report so we could find out more information based on what we found the last couple of years.
So let me ask you this first of all, when it's next gen, what is that age group specifically?
Yeah, so it's basically people under the age of 45. So for this report, in the past, Oh yeah. It's very vague, I will say, because it's not like clearly defined by the U.S. Census or anything like that. Right. But the way that I've defined it and a lot of others define it is millennials are generally between the ages of 25 to 44. And in this report, I broke it into 2 segments because that's a huge population. And, a 42-year-old is in a very different life place than a 26-year-old. So we did younger millennials, older millennials. And then this year also focused on Gen Z. And I will say that the National Association of Realtors says that 46% of all of home buyers or homeowners are next gen. And so that includes Gen Z and millennials. It was only 4% of the population or home buyers were Gen Z, but that's still fairly significant. And it's obviously what's coming. So we measured or surveyed those in the same amount, like equally Gen Z, younger and older millennials.
Okay. So let me ask you, like, just right away. What was like the most shocking statistic that you found? Because I know there's a couple that I was actually surprised by.
Yeah. Really curious to know what you thought was most surprising. But I think so last year, we asked about their trust in lenders, and we found that 2 in 3 NextGen homebuyers said that they did not think lenders were trustworthy or reliable. And I was, that even whenever I asked friends, they were like confirmed that, but I started talking a lot about trust. And I also even realized that this is outside of financial services too. Like you look at how this growing distrust is happening across industries, whether it be healthcare, media, like government, faith-based institutions, there's growing distrust in all of these different industries. But what was really interesting about this year was that we asked more specific questions about trust and who they trusted and why. And we found that 2 in 3 NextGen homebuyers said that they did trust their loan officer to help them make smart decisions. And they trusted their real estate agent to make smart decisions. They did not so much trust their banking institution or credit union. So I think that's what that tells us, is that people are trusting more in the individual than the institution. So they're not as trusting of the lender, but they're trusting of the loan officer they choose to work with. So I think that, while there's obviously a lot of room for growth in that, and I think a huge opportunity for people to actually, become that trusted advisor, I think it's interesting that it's showing that angle,
Yeah, I believe a lot has to do with social media and the fact that these lenders, these loan officers, real estate agents are putting themselves out there in a way that's showing their personality. It's more personal. So then that person on the other end is starting to feel like that trust. Even before they go to that person, they're already like, gosh, this is someone that I feel like they're really knowledgeable. I can trust them. Like they're going to help me. They're going to guide me properly. And so I feel like a lot has to do with that. And so that's why for me, I'm like super adamant about getting, our loan officers out there. But that's like a whole other rabbit hole that we could go down is that whole.
Yes. And we should.
Yeah,
I do think it's no, because I think it's so related. And that's what it was interesting to look at, the way that people are using social media, how that has shifted and not shifted. Like the exact same percentage of people that said they went to YouTube last year said they're going to YouTube this year. And it was the #1 ranked social platform, and specifically for learning, and education. But TikTok rose to #4. Last year it was like 12% or something. This year it went to 54%. And so it's a huge jump. And it tells you that people are like, I follow a bunch of financial influencers, and you learn from them and you build a relationship with that person through their content. And that's absolutely what is going to help them build not only trust in you, but confidence in the whole process, which that was another big factor, that there's just an overall lack of confidence in home buying and the market and all of that. So it definitely all comes together.
Yeah. And it's interesting because one of the stats that I thought was actually pretty shocking was the fact that, the NextGen, they are using social media, but at the same time, they want to have that one-on-one in-person interaction and communication with their loan officer, which I think that's where people forget. They think, oh, social media, they don't want to have anything to do with me beside, just over the phone and the computer. And it's no, they actually want to be in front of you face to face. And I thought that was pretty surprising because I think it was like 41%.
Okay, so this one was actually the most surprising statistic that I came across, because everything else was like, this is really interesting, really important. But that one I was like shocked by. So we found that 41% hold on, I know I've got this here. Okay. They were 41% more likely to give a 5-star experience if they met in person. So they're, and so what's interesting about that is that the buyer didn't necessarily say, I wanted to meet in person, or I prefer to meet in person. They didn't say that. What they said was, they told us whether they had a 5-star experience or not, or what their, rating was. And then they told us whether they met in person or not. And so we found that putting that data together, they were also significantly more likely to trust their loan officer if they'd met in person. And so, all of that makes sense. And I was actually doing a webinar this morning on like presenting on the report, and some loan officers were saying, yeah, but my next gen, like millennials tell me all the time that they would prefer to text. And I'm like, yes, these are not mutually exclusive. And I think that that's a big shift for the industry and maybe people in general to realize like, we are using all of these things. It's not, did I go to social media? Did I check reviews? It's not, did I meet in person or did I text with them? It's like we're in an omni-channel experience, and you need to know when to use what channel for communication.
Yeah, and I think that lends to the fact, hey, Flavia, she's one of my colleagues, that lends to the fact that we are having to work harder and smarter. When they say that, it truly means that you're having to do the texting, do the in-person, do the social media, but then actually build a connection and build a relationship. So yeah, it's we're having to work a lot more, but I feel like at the end of the day, that's just where everything is shifting towards. It like, this isn't a trend, this isn't a fad of like, oh, you know what, in 5 years no one's going to want to have that human interaction anymore, have that or
right.
social media is not going anywhere. So now it's just realizing that you have to implement both. It's the building the relationship and being tech savvy and getting on social media, and it's very daunting to a lot of people. I get it.
Yeah. And like, I wouldn't be someone who I would refuse to meet in person. I think if I were if a loan officer was like, you need to come to my office, I'd be like, absolutely not, like I'll find someone else.
Really?
So I think you have to know, I think you have to know like when to, ask, maybe make it standard if you have the time and capacity or whatever to say like, come into my office for that initial consultation. Maybe I would feel differently, but I think that would be my inclination, is to think, I can do this over video now, but if they say no, then do it over Zoom, or something like that, where you are able to show your face, you're still able to build trust through the eye-to-eye contact and show that you're a person, because again, people are building trust with individuals. They're not building it with they don't want it to be a transaction. They want it to be someone who's providing them meaningful advice for a meaningful event in their life.
Yeah, and I think for so many years and decades, it was considered a transaction, and now it's not anymore. So for those that have been used to treating it that way, yeah, it is a little bit shocking of like, are you kidding me? Now I have to do this. But I think that's why our industry is going through probably a huge shift right now, not just with everything going on, but I think just with people in general, just with who's in it, who's going to remain in it, those that are coming in. But I think it's a good thing. I think this is when things are going to hopefully really change for the better, in the sense of like being able to service everyone and understand our customer and the future home buyer. I think that's just so important anyways. Because just like you said, that whole trust issue, because every loan officer that I know, and especially at my company, like they're all trustworthy. They're like the really amazing human beings. And so it's kind of weird when you have people that automatically think that they're just trying to like basically screw you over. So excuse my language here, but it's true. Like most of us that are in this industry, we really are trying to help. Like we're trying to get people into a home to, achieve the American dream, to build generational wealth, all of those things, like genuinely, like it's a genuine, sincere thing that we want to do. So that for people not to really get that, we need to do a better job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's also a big financial literacy gap, and that came up consistently in this report and previous ones. So there's a lack of trust, but there's also just a lack of confidence in like even starting the process, and they don't know enough to feel like confident having a conversation with someone. I think it was last year we found that like 1 in 5 said that they were not confident in any step of the home buying process. And then there was, when you broke it down individually, there's a lack of confidence everywhere. But I think that and then this year we found that over half of people said that they didn't have the financial advice or support they needed to achieve their financial goals. So there's like overall, there's this lack of financial knowledge, which came up as number 3 in their top barriers to their financial situation this year, by the way. That was a huge amount of people that said, I just don't have the knowledge to support myself. And then there's the lack of support and education or access to that. And when you put that together, it creates a huge opportunity for a loan officer or an agent or whoever to be able to come in and say, and like build that brand as someone that they can trust as a resource, as a, educational source to empower them.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we kind of are in our little bubble sometimes. And so we assume that the consumer would know what it means to like have a good credit score, what even a good credit score is number wise, or we assume that everyone knows that you don't have to put 20% down anymore. Like there's things that I think we take for granted because we're in it all the time. And so I try to remind our loan officers, like, you have to understand that there's some people that literally have no clue. So what you think might be kind of like, okay, this is lame that I'm talking about this. I'm like, no, you need to talk about it. I have to remind myself too, when it comes to social media, sometimes I assume that people know how to do an Instagram story. And then I have to remind myself, like, no, that's not the case. So I think that's really important too, because yeah, we just gotta get caught up in like, well, of course someone needs to know that. No, they don't. Like,
right.
So just educate. It's like edutainment. That's what Joe Wilson and I were talking about yesterday, that there's a way to now educate where it's not boring, it's fun, people pay attention. And then, then suddenly become that expert. And when they're ready to buy, they're like, I keep seeing that person doing, TikToks or reels, and they seem to know what they're doing and they seem to be really fun. I want to work with them.
Right. And to your point, I mean, something that you emphasize a lot is like people are following the individual. So it's important to have the education. That's something everyone's looking for and needs, and they'll follow you for that. But also they want to see who you are, and so because you can see, again, they're not following the lender, they're following the loan officer. They are drawn more towards the individual. So be yourself in delivering that education, and I think that that's a really important piece of that too.
Oh, absolutely. And I think another thing that's really interesting was the single women. We are, and I'm right here, single woman, and I'm getting ready to hopefully buy a rental property. So I'm actually starting the whole process. My boss is my loan officer right now, and I'm starting to go through it. And I haven't done it in like 6 years. And I will tell you this, when I did it 6 years ago for the first time on my own, I was doing it through a builder. So it was a very different experience because they were kind of like I was just a number. I'm not going to lie. Like when it comes to big builders and mortgage companies, like it's a little bit different of an experience. So for me now, this experience has been really much better. But the fact that we are such a huge number of home buyers, like I think a lot of people also kind of forget that we're pretty powerful beings right now.
Yes. So this is something I am really excited to talk about. And it's actually, I'm going to create another mini study that I'll be releasing in probably early March, but completely on this. And I'm going to, okay, great. Yeah. Because, and if there's other questions you're interested in, I'm going to do another little survey, but we found a lot of interesting data looking at the last 3 reports, and especially this last one on the female homebuyer, NextGen homebuyer. But to your point, it's a huge population. Single women make up the second largest cohort of homebuyers today, double that of single men. And women now make up a third of U.S. household decisions, and they're increasing in the amount of even married women who are making the household financial decisions. And that's like grown, I can't remember how much it was, but it was a significant amount just in the last 5 years. So this is a population that needs to be really like understood, and I think that there's a lot of challenges that we've ignored. I was thinking actually that there wouldn't be much of a gender gap when it came to the NextGen research, because we've made so much progress, and women are more educated than men, and in terms of like degrees and stuff like that. So I was really shocked to see the kind of disparity that we've seen every single year. So I have some interesting data on that I can share.
Yeah, because we think, okay, yeah, no, we're it's progressing, it's getting better, like we're making, but yeah, you realize that there really still is such a disparity between the two. And so I'm really interested to find out like what you find out, because I know as a single woman, I still feel it, you know what I mean? Like just and kind of a lot of different aspects. Yeah. So that's good. And that's why Josh essentially created this show, Women That Shred, because he saw the value in really kind of bringing, focus to women in the industry and to be able to talk about things. Because I think a lot has to do with the fact that we don't talk about it, right? Like, unless we voice our opinion and voice our concerns and voice our challenges, we're not going to get anywhere. So the fact that it's still a challenge for us, like, that's I'm kind of surprised in that area that we're still like such a huge gap.
Yeah, it makes me very motivated to talk on this topic because I think that, we're not realizing how much of the industry education and the approach is not aligned with what women need, and want. And so, there's a lot that you can dive into that, but I'll stick to just the research here. And it was interesting because, again, 2 years ago in 2020 was when I saw this huge gap. We ran the data over and over, tried to control for absolutely everything possible, income level, job, family status, anything, and still saw this huge gap. And so we found that there was, like, men were 3 times more likely than women to be investing. They were more likely to be investing across every aspect, not just the stock market, but also even, savings and retirement accounts, all of that. And so, but women were more likely to be motivated to buy a home. And so looking at that data, I was like, okay, why is there such a huge gap? And I ended up doing a follow-up survey that year because I was so interested in seeing this gap. And we found out that men were significantly more likely than women to have learned about financial planning as children. So there's like an aspect of how we grew up too that's still playing out, which I think will, be shifting with Gen Z in particular. So it'll be interesting to take a look at. But today, NextGen homebuyers women are still way less confident when it comes to the home buying process. Men were 2 times more likely to say they trusted their loan officer. And women were also 2 times more likely than men to say that they did not have the financial advice or support they needed. So there's like, a lot of, it makes sense if you're feeling like you don't have the education or knowledge, women are going to be more drawn to buy a home, but less confident in investing in other areas. And they're going to feel like there's a lack of trust when it comes to going through the process. But women were also hit pretty hard with COVID, significantly harder than men. And I think there's a lot out there about increased household responsibilities and job instability. And that showed up in this report too. We saw that women were 21% more challenged than men in job stability. And when we looked at like what were the top challenges people had in their financial situation, the second one that came up for everybody was mental health or anxiety. And so like anxiety is playing a big role, and women were 36% more likely to say that they struggled in that area. And you think about, how much they're dealing with, of course, they're going to be more anxious consumers and more anxious about their financial situation. But that's something I think that's so important for providers to understand, is like, there's a lot that people are dealing with. There's a lack of trust, lack of confidence. And so you have to come in really understanding the psychology of that transaction.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like when you said psychology. So yeah, if you're a loan officer, I get it. You're there to lend money and so forth, but you're also kind of there in a very guiding manner, like almost like a therapist sometimes. I mean, I know that sometimes you're dealing with situations with divorces, with deaths, things where you really have to be empathetic and compassionate towards that consumer as well, right? Like, it's not, like you said, it's not a transaction anymore. And so having that element is really important too. And what you're saying too is there's a huge opportunity, and this is something that you, Dal, and I mentioned a little bit before we went live, is that now there's a huge opportunity for women that are loan officers, that are financial advisors, that are, anybody that's in that space. This is your opportunity, your chance to put yourself out there and to educate other women, because more and more women are trying to get guidance from other women. Like, that's what I found too, is that women want to get investment advice from other women. They want to know like what they went through, because they can like relate, like, okay, okay, so you're a mom too, or you're divorced too, and you are experiencing this. Like, what have you done? Like, how can you help me? They're more likely to listen to a female that can get them than otherwise. And so that's why I feel like, yeah, this is really important for women out there to empower other women. Like, we have a responsibility. If you know, and you know things and you can educate, then it's your responsibility to do that for other women.
Yeah.
That's how
Well,
I
and
feel.
I will tell you some of that is because they feel, I will say when I was looking for a financial planner, I feel bad for this guy because I know he didn't mean to come across this way, but he came across like I was not smart enough, and it was funny because I remember even thinking like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't like the way you're talking to me about it. Like it was just like,
Yeah.
he was assuming I didn't know a lot of things. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't know some of those things, but, but I hate that you're acting that way. And I wouldn't, feel that way, I think, if it were a woman, but I still went with a different male financial planner. And it was,
My financial planner is a male, by the way.
yeah. Well, that's what I'm
I mean,
saying. Like, I don't think it has to be the gender piece. It's the compassion piece, and making me feel empowered to make smart decisions for myself. Women in particular really want to make sure that they have all the information. We are going to be less trusting and all of that, but we want to feel confident in your expertise, but we also want to know what's going on, and so that financial planner was able to give me information, not assume that I was, not smart enough or that I was, I don't know. I think that there's like a component where a lot of women feel like things are explained to them in a certain way, or there's so many other challenges going on in their life that women professionals can understand and immediately intuitively be compassionate about. Like same thing with the anxiety factor. Like there's a level of anxiety that people have that are due to a lot of things like child household responsibilities, that type of thing. And if you can be compassionate about that and just understand there's all these factors coming into play, then you're more likely to get their business,
Yeah, and that's, I mean, for an example with myself, like my financial advisor, I was referred to him by another divorced woman, and so I was like, all right. And then he's actually almost half my age, but I will tell you this: he ended up moving firms, and guess what? He was super humbled about how many people followed him. I didn't care where he was going. Like I knew where it was. It's a big name investment firm, so it was no big deal. But like I was like, whatever you need to do, like I'm following you. Like I had nothing to do with, and so that's another thing that lends to the fact of like it's the individual. Here I let him move all my money because I trusted him, not because of the institution.
Exactly.
So it just goes to show you.
And I think even whenever you're working with couples, making sure that if you're working with the husband in that couple and there's a wife or female partner, then making sure that you're involving them if they want to be involved, and say like, hey, do you want to go ahead and include your partner on this? Because I just read a stat that after a woman's partner dies, 70% of them move to a different financial planner. 70% of them. So it's like a crazy amount of people within the first year. So anyway, I think that it tells you like, we want to be obviously working with someone that we trust, that we feel empowered by. So I think that's important.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So obviously like we're getting close to the end, but I want you to be able to get, if there's something that you want to like definitely have us know before we head out, like please share, because I know there's so much.
I know there's so much. I would just like to say, I think the overall theme of the report this year was on trust and confidence. And I think that all plays together in the way that we are looking on social media, the way that we want to, or how we're experiencing people online and in person. And so whatever you can do to think about how you build your business and your strategy for 2023, focused on like that kind of like really taking a look at how you're building trust and how you're empowering people with education. That's going to improve in all of those barriers that we've talked about so far. But the report you can look at in previous years' reports at nextgenhomebuyer.com. So if you want to take a look at that, that would be good.
I think she put the links in there as well.
Perfect.
So like if people have questions in particular, like where can they go? Because they might want to kind of delve in further into some of the stats that you have.
Yeah, so you can follow me on LinkedIn and direct message me or comment on anything I share, and I'll respond to you there. And then nextgenhomebuyer.com is where you can access all the reports and dive into more of the research.
Okay, and I think this, like, everybody needs to do this, like go to the and find the report, because this is huge. Like, and I'm so looking forward to your report on women. So I'm definitely gonna have you back to talk about that.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I appreciate it because no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you have thoughts, or anyone on the call has thoughts on like what you'd like to know about the next gen women home buyer, or what you'd like to see in future research, or what you have questions about, this is how I've built all the studies, is from input from people and, hearing from the industry and the consumer. So we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and also just anybody, if there's something that you want us to like talk about even further, I love having guests come back on, like even within several weeks or so. Like I don't have any kind of structure here, so if for whatever reason, so this helped me think of ways to impact the public on social media through reels posts when thinking of trust and confidence. Yes, see, that's like, I think it'd be a key takeaway for a lot of people, realizing like it really is important to put themselves out there. But yeah, so if there's, for whatever reason, someone's like, I want to hear more about this, then I will contact you, and then hopefully we can have you back on, because yeah, there's just so much to talk about.
I know there's so much more we could have talked about, but I'm glad we got to have a few minutes together today, and it's so great to see you again.
Thank you, Kristin. And I am not going to be here next week. I'm going to be literally in the car driving my daughter back from University of Arizona for Thanksgiving. So we will have a break next week, and then the following week we'll come back, and I don't know who my guest is yet. So if you want to be a guest, reach out to me. All right, Kristin, thank you so much. And thanks for everyone that joined in on the live and on the replay.